Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad you could make it. Today, we have a great show planned. We have some very special guests joining us. You would have known this from the title of this, that we're going to speak to the brains behind University of Buffalo's Pro AV side of what they do there. So we've got John Pfeffer and Adam Pellittieri joining us. And I was lucky enough to spend a few days with these guys earlier in September when they were getting ready for this term. So I learned a lot, and I hope that we can do a bit more today. So I will be hosting today, and hopefully that means I'm going to sit back and listen because these guys have a lot to talk about, which is great. If you're watching this on the Wistia platform, you're going to see some good audience engagement stuff. So there's a nice chat window so you can talk to all your colleagues and other people you probably know who are watching as well. And you can ask your questions. So hopefully you can get your questions into these guys as well. And what we'll do is we'll hold on to those questions and then we'll do a bit of a firing round towards the end of the show today. So it's nice to see all the people already chatting. I see Kevin and Kelly and Larry from Minneapolis and people from, looks like mostly around the US. Some dance party mentions, that's great. And yes, Toronto backdrop. So I'm in Ottawa, Canada. So the country is kind of excited right now about the Blue Jays. So it's a good time to be here. Um, and yeah, I'm just looking at all this chatter. This is great. Um, okay, so there are going to be some polls that are going to come up throughout this program. So the first one's already up right now, and answer those polls, and then we'll pull them into the conversation as well, because usually we get some interesting feedback about what people are into, really. So let me jump into a bit of context around today's talk. Before bringing in our guests, there's probably some people joining here today who may be new to Epiphan or why we're here doing this. So a little bit of background about who we are. We have been spending a lot of time with our friends in higher ed for the last few years. And it seems like there's a lot of transformation happening in the higher ed AV space where people are looking for more efficient ways to capture, record, and stream video. So we sell a suite of hardware, and you're going to hear the name Pearl Nexus come up a lot in today's conversation. And this has proven to be a really popular device with the higher ed community because it just simplifies AV rollout across campus. So you capture all your inputs into this, stream them up, usually to a CMS like Panopto or Kaltura. And then you're also going to hear us talk a little bit about Epiphan Edge. So this is our cloud management platform. Sometimes we'll call it Epiphan Cloud. You'll hear those terms. It basically means you can see all of your campus and all of the AV, Epiphan AV across campus. And that really makes what we call the Epiphan ecosystem. But also today, we are going to be teasing out something new, something we haven't really spent much time talking about unless you've come to see us in person at an event. And that is our new camera. So in 9 days, we'll be announcing the EC20 camera, and this will complement that Epiphan ecosystem. So this is a really killer camera. It's going to fit in beautifully in classrooms. We're going to be talking a lot about this over the next couple of weeks on our socials and putting up videos on this. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a fun time for Epiphan, and we look forward to all of your questions if you have them today about that camera. We can get into that, but that's something that we're working on right now, and you'll hear these guys talk about it because they were some early people who got to try it out. So um, we're going to bring these guys in a minute, and we're going to talk about their transformation from capture PCs to a dedicated hardware approach. And we'll look at it kind of in that holistic way. Obviously, we're Epiphan and we're the hardware of choice at this institution, but really we want to understand that motivation to move from PCs into hardware. So without further ado, let's bring on our guests, John and Adam. Thank you guys so much for spending a couple of minutes with us today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
So how's the term rolling out? How are things on campus today? Things going smoothly?
Seem to be. I sometimes forget we're already at midterm, and still, of course, we have to answer the trouble tickets in the classrooms, but so far, so good.
Great, great. That's good to hear. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey over the past year. So as I prefaced, you've done a lot of change there on campus. So maybe you could just give a bit of backstory about where you're at right now and where you're coming from when it comes to the capture in your classrooms.
Well, certainly, I'll give a little bit of that, and Adam can jump in with what we've done recently. We've come from a place of homegrown systems way back when there was a thing called RealAudio, if you remember that. And we built our first audio capture system using RealAudio and repurposed PCs in classrooms when there really wasn't anything on the market to do that kind of thing at the time. Um, we moved from that to some appliances that weren't the greatest and then built our own. And I'll let Adam take that from there.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So my when I started at the university, we were in the middle of transitioning off of Echo 360 into the sort of back into the PC based capture systems that we had when we moved from Echo 360 to Panopto. And I know that some of our hesitancy that we had in the past on appliance based capture was Echo 360 was very much married to the platform, and as the platform didn't really evolve in the way that we needed it to, and we switched over, then we had this big hardware switch over that we were doing. And so we have sort of for a while now been looking at sort of the real cost of what it costs us to build these PC racks. I know that we spend a good amount of time deploying these. We do scheduled capture in every single one of our about 200 centrally scheduled rooms that we have at UB. And so moving over to something that's a lifecycle replacement that isn't being reimaged all the time, it doesn't need to have quite the same cadence of replacement, with Windows 11 rollouts and stuff like that we're dealing with right now with a lot of our classroom PCs. We're looking for an off ramp for that level of support from our computer support folks in that team.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you guys when we first started meeting in the summertime. At least I got involved in talking to you, was that you seem to have a longer history in the video capture than most other schools. In that I've met a lot of other schools who maybe they started with PC capture and they had 10 classrooms and then they started and rolled it out big. But you have done VHS, you have done the real audio, you have done so many iterations of this. I feel like you have seen a lot in that time. So I kind of trust your judgment on this. Um, and what's different about what you've just rolled out now? Like you've adopted Epiphan Pearl as your capture solution. Can you describe the difference between that? And maybe Adam, you can weigh in on this. You touched on a little bit. What's the difference between having a capture appliance like Epiphan versus the PCs that you still have in some of your classrooms right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I have some of the old ones from our test deployment sitting around over here. Um, if I don't disappear completely into my blurred background. So we have a big old PC rack here full of, audio converters and all of this stuff. So the process of getting our old captured system going was we have a rack that we need to build. We need to buy, 4 or 5 parts for the thing, including a PC. Then we need to get that PC image with the special image. That image needs to be refreshed every semester with our cadence for security updates and all of those things and checked after that. Then the PC comes back to us. We get to build the rack. Then we get to deploy the rack. And then every 6 months, or I think our replacement cadence for these PCs was 4 years. Every 4 years, we need to pull this thing back out. The PC needs to come back out. It needs to go back in. And on top of that, and our app support, our people who support our computers, they do a great job, but it is a burden on them to have to reimage these machines over and over and over again. This turns into something that now, that process is 2 people on our team at least, plus a person on another team, tickets flying back and forth, waiting to get, all of that's going on. The difference for the Epiphan for us is once we got the documentation and we're happy with how it's going, it takes me getting the thing registered, throwing the presets on it, and telling Beth on our capture team that it's there and it's ready to be picked up and scheduled. Which just the simplicity in terms of how much time we are asking from other people, especially, is the main difference for
Yeah,
us.
yeah. So I still see there's a lot of customers now who they're happy with their PC workflows because they built it and it seems to be working for them. you at some point were happy with your PC-based workflow, I'm assuming, right? Was it what you thought it was going to be when you built it? Like you talked about having to re-image it and some of those pains, but did those come after you like designed and built this thing, John? Or were they just considered like you had to go through that stuff if you wanted that kind of system and there was no other option?
I mean, I think we were happy with it until, as Adam said, some of the things, that pop up, the OSs, the constant driver updates. Um, and from my level, whenever I can think about a way to reduce work on a resource, on a staff resource, taking 200 computers away that they don't have to worry about anymore, and they
Hmm.
can focus on something else like, oh my, AI perhaps. Those are always the things I'm also looking at when I'm thinking about this stuff is how can I reduce burden where it makes sense and where it will benefit this university ultimately. So that's how that came across in my mind.
Was it a hard decision to make? Because like you grow attached to these things in that like you built it, right? It was working for you. It's hard to switch away from a system that technically works.
Absolutely it is, and it's the thing that somebody created, and it's sort of their baby, and maybe they don't want to
Yeah.
lose that right away, right? But again, from looking at this as a leadership role, what can I find that's the new baby that we can take pride in, that we can move towards? So it's always that sort of balance of these different things going on all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been hearing from a lot of customers this week, or a lot of prospects, I should say. People who are looking at the Windows update that's happening right now from Windows 10 to Windows 11 and seeing that as maybe a straw that broke the camel's back scenario where they're going, oh, okay, this looks a little scary. Can you summarize that problem real quick for our audience, the Windows 11 update and what that means?
I don't, Adam probably can do better than me on that one.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we handled the Windows 11 transition, as we do we reimage our computers twice a year, typically in all of our classrooms. All of our rooms had two PCs in all of those rooms supporting the regular in-room PC that does all the regular functions, and then our capture appliance. The capture PC, the trickiest thing about deploying that image for the capture PC is that a PC is a device that is meant to do a whole lot of things. And so very often when you run into problems, it's with the problems with the things that you aren't necessarily using on that machine. And that transition into Windows 11, well, of course it's different and there's more testing that goes into that deployment and that reimaging. It is essentially just another reimage for us. But again, that is every semester. Poor August, he has to get the PCs ready to go. We have to deploy the test image, make sure that nothing in those Windows updates broke the Panopto application or one of the services that it depends on, or one of the other, like a registry thing that we use to keep the things awake, or any of those things. And all of a sudden something that you we now take that and we can just go into the cloud service and update the firmware twice a year on the same cadence, and we can be pretty sure that it's going to be hold on to the settings that we needed to hold on to the registrations. We're not going to have to go in and manually rebuild all these machines, rebuild all those Panopto instances in the same way that we had to.
Yeah, right. So do you have any advice for those people out there who are struggling with that Windows update challenges?
Um, I mean, obviously, our solution was starting to look at these appliances again, and finding something that we can configure to sort of fit into the same space and into the same place that it was. The other thing that we had going on is that, prior to Nexus, there weren't a lot of products that fit into the exact space in the rack that we were using. That was quite as applicable and had the same IO available that we did. That was the other thing that was pretty important to us, was the flexibility in the IO. We have rooms where we wanted to work on rolling out dual content streams and other things that aren't necessarily natively available on other products. And so
Yeah,
uh,
or you need more dongles or more,
yeah.
you have to bring in more gear for that. Yeah. Okay. So you landed on Epiphan as your solution because it solved your problems. But it's one thing to go, okay, I've got this great box. It does the things I need it to do. How do you then, John, go to your team and suggest, yeah, I want to replace, 200 capture solutions across campus? How did that go?
Um, it it wasn't just a quick and easy thing. We had to do a lot of discussion about, what did it mean to workflow. We have a phenomenal group of staff that work with our students that support our classrooms. And so we kind of had to think about what does that mean for them? And some of the answers weren't right what they wanted to hear right away. And so we had to work through a lot of that. I think we're getting there. Certainly, as we deploy more of these, I think everyone will become more comfortable with it. It's just thinking about all the work through processes and making sure, if making sure we could deal with those things and making sure we're doing it the right way for everyone, not just to solve my particular needs or Adam's particular needs, but everybody's.
So, and who is the everybody in this case? Who are all the other people that you need to make sure that their needs are met?
Boy, yeah, I mean, well, from the students straight up through the staff that support them, the students that we hire to go work in the classrooms, we have to make sure they can figure out how to, understand this change that's coming, right? They're going to have to, for a while, look in two different places to make sure recording is happening. My hope is this, as I'm hearing from other schools, Epiphan is reliable and we might not have to be worrying about monitoring audio every second of the day for an example.
Yeah. Um, can you tell me the role of faculty in all of this? How much input do they have into these kinds of decisions around, changing from one capture solution to another?
Probably in this case, not much right now because this is sort of a back end device. And so they probably don't know even that we
Yeah.
made this
Yeah.
change.
Okay.
Um, I'm excited about things like the ability to show on the touchscreen, for instance, that, we haven't done this yet, but I know it's possible, show that there's no audio all of a sudden. And maybe they can self-correct that problem, turn their microphone on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Those kinds of exciting things for, as where the faculty would get involved.
Hmm. And Adam, when you and I spoke in September, we talked a little bit about what this means for students. And obviously, they also have no idea what's going on here. They don't need to know what's capturing the content, but what do you think it means to have, 200 classrooms well equipped for capture for those students?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, first and foremost, especially when you're changing a back end thing like this, and hopefully it's transparent or, an improvement to the end users, but of course the improvement is all in the integration and what you're doing there. For me, when you have something that just decreases the amount of time that you're spending on something, which was sort of the first thing about this and the first
Mhm.
reason that we looked at this, we said this decreases the amount of tier two, tier three time that we are spending on these devices, on these appliances. It really, for us, comes down to access and the amount that we can roll out and the amount that we can sustainably support on our campus. Where if we're not dealing with quite so many of, oh, this PC is getting a little bit weird. Oh, one all of a sudden one of my little capture appliances, my HDMI to USB converter is being a little bit flaky and we're losing camera in those rooms. When we do that, this then becomes a service that we can talk about rolling out wider, making available in more different kinds of spaces, finding more places that we can position capture on campus, as opposed to saying, well, this is what we offer in our central rooms. It becomes more, you know, why can't we expand this service more places? Why can't we
Mhm.
find more places that we can add scheduled capture? Capture is our number one accommodation request from a technology standpoint. It helps so many students with so many needs for learning that anytime that we get the opportunity to deploy more with less burden on our staff is, for a student's perspective, I hope it increases access.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I like the way you position it that way. And and I remember you showing me, well, you showed that little tray of all the different things there, and each one of those represents something that's going to consume a bit of your time. So ultimately, if you can remove that distraction, you have more time, better level of service for all of your students.
Mhm.
John, when we met at that same time, we also talked about your forecasting models. And it sounded like you were really happy with it. I remember in the way that you were able to look further ahead. And I think you had a good piece of software around that. Can you just talk a little bit about how you guys do forecasting for the, AV in your classrooms?
Sure. So, and it's been a nice growth process from the old days of homemade databases and spreadsheets, where, things weren't always consistently entered right, to now having a system that's a cloud-based database, and it actually survived the AWS mess yesterday. I don't know how they did it because they're on AWS too, but it worked great. So shout out to Talem 3. But that system is basically where we establish all our standards for all our classrooms. Once we've established a standard and we know what we're going to sort of, our standard projector, for instance, for years was the Sony something something 70. Now it's the Sony something something 80. And I can go in there and put that information in and forecast out, the next 3 years, that cost. I can hand that to leadership and say, hey, here's what it's going to cost us over the next 3 to 5 years to replace what we have established the life cycle for each of these devices. So,
Mhm.
this Pearl's going to last me what, 10 years? So, that was a joke you were supposed to laugh at. Maybe not. So I can forecast that, right? I can say I'm going to need to spend X dollars in a few years on this. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's keep going on that line and talk a little bit about the future of your classrooms beyond just forecasting how long your pearls are going to last. You're also thinking about innovating in those spaces. And I know it's going to come up in a lot of conversations, the role of AI in your classrooms. So, in a very general sense, with hundreds of rooms set up for class or for classroom capture, you have a lot of data, right? You have these cameras looking all day in these classrooms, and AI loves nothing more than data. It means you can do stuff with it. So where have your brains gone over the past year as we've seen all of these cool AI tools come out? Like, what could you be doing in those classrooms? And we can be very blue sky here. These are not things you're doing tomorrow, but just in general, have you given that some thought?
probably too much thought.
Mhm.
I'll quickly just say, I'm reminded of a keynote I heard at InfoComm in 24, that, AI at its, we own, we manage, we generate the audio and video, which is going to really be the core of AI. And unfortunately, in some cases, it's a terrible core of AI right now. And I'm hoping higher ed can think about the good uses for AI. We are doing that here at UB. And then how do we take that content generated in the classroom and do good with it? How do we make the faculty's job easier in a classroom with AI? Not as sort of a surveillance state, but as a way to help them. Can we do simple things like take attendance that way? I mean, that's something I've heard from higher ed leadership from years, is how can we take attendance easier than we're doing it now? Maybe AI has the answer to that. I think about it very, very broadly from that sense of, we generate the content. What can we do with it? Adam
Yeah.
probably has a totally different answer than mine. He's more grounded than I am, I think, in that sense.
Yeah, and for me, as we are first and foremost a support organization, and first and foremost an organization that's here to support academics, instructors, and all of that. And so part of what, again, when we get into that increasing access thing, of course, the first focus is always on students and how we can increase access for students, but it also being able to roll out more widely and not and allows us to be able to give more of this data to our instructors, for our instructors to do what they want to be doing with the data. Because if there's going to be a sea change in, you know, personal instruction, or the way the instructors are going to be developing and designing their curriculum or their assessment, that's going to come from the instructors first and foremost. And I think that our best role as stewards of this technology and this data is to make it available in the easiest way for the instructors, the faculty, to do what they want to be doing with that data. And we want to be able to make it available anywhere that they are.
Yes.
And
Th-
not
th-
have to limit them to say, okay, well, here's the 8 rooms, of the dozen rooms that you teach in, half of them or less can support what you want to be doing with your data, with your classes, and instead sort of empower them through the access and the reach that we have.
yeah. And you said something interesting there. You said personalized learning. Um, are you getting, is that a conversation that's happening right now? Are you speaking about that? Like, and I realize we're getting into the pedagogy of learning outcomes and stuff. This goes beyond what you capture in a room, but obviously you play a role in that.
Yeah, and of course, I hope that all of our instructors are trying to personalize their content as much as they possibly can to the actual classes and the people that you have. Even like the simple AI tools that are already out there, AI captioning, transcription, those kinds of things, which are products that are out there today that can be used today in the video that we have. Being able to make that available, even today as something to help generate study guides, help students who can't make it to class or do well with a summary. If those are things that the instructors want to make available for their students more easily and decrease the burden on the instructors in the same way that we're trying to decrease the burden on our staff by streamlining that, absolutely, that's something that hopefully we can make available to them. This is where I go off and say a lot of compliance things real quick.
Way to go. You had to say compliance. It was going to come up eventually. Yeah, we can pretend that doesn't exist for today's conversation, uh, because we're dreaming a little bit, but I think we see it a lot of the same way in that, why not capture it, right? Start there. We should be
Yeah,
capturing
absolutely. And of
some
course,
value to extract from it.
being able to have those controls, and so that instructors get to make their own decisions on how this data is being used, and that we're not, these courses are are the instructor's
Yes.
intellectual property in addition to ours, so they should be able to opt out of these things. And that's part of where, the way that we structure these and the way that we deploy these is important, making sure that we are tagging what we're doing and that we're making sure that we're using all those tools how we have them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We do have a lot of questions coming in, which is great. So if you're watching and you have questions for John or Adam, please put them into the Q&A panel here. You can put them into the chat and I might see them there, but there's a little specific question mark bubble thing. And if you put them in there, then we'll know we'll get through them. Because we do have a good amount of time to go through questions today, which is great. And any other thoughts on the AI side of things from either of you that you'd want to mention for this audience? No, okay. Well, then let's keep it moving here. And in fact, let's get right into those questions right away. So we have our first question, and I cannot see who the name of this person is because my screen's getting cut off. But the question is, what CMS are you using for scheduling? And I'll answer that because it's Panopto. And they say the pros and cons of Panopto scheduling versus Epiphan Edge. So just maybe in general, how does the Panopto scheduling work for you? How well does it work?
Yeah, so I mean, I can speak, I was working closely with our capture team when we were deploying these. It was essentially seamless. I think that the main thing that really the only substantive change is that the actual specifics on how we're configuring the templates in Panopto are slightly different, but that's just in terms of, honestly, it's a little bit simpler because now what we have is when we bring this up in Panopto, we no longer have inogeny parentheses serial number on there, and it just
Yeah.
says camera one, content two when we bring it into Panopto as the CMS. And then from there, we don't need to, in the PC world, if any of you manage a bunch of PCs, you know that Windows doesn't so much think generically about displays. It's sort of tracking each individual product that you plug into your thing and trying to remember what settings you wanted on that particular one. When you have this, which makes it a little bit more generic, and we just have 2 or 3 streams coming out of these things at a time, that definitely streamlined the templating side of the thing. In terms of the actual Panopto scheduling capture side of the thing, it was essentially seamless. We just changed the name of the devices that was in the room. They say -EP at the end of them now, and they just all went in exactly the same. We just had to
Got
make
it.
sure they were rescheduled after we put the new ones in.
Yeah. And just a little addendum to that, we do offer scheduling in Epiphan Edge, but that is if you want to schedule recordings to maybe push to an FTP or push to somewhere else. So it's more of a lightweight tool as compared to what you'd see with Panopto's full, campus-wide solution. Brad Snyder, interested in Stream Deck integration. Do you guys use Stream Deck at all with on the capture side or no?
No,
Uh,
sorry, go ahead.
We do not. So in terms of the interface that we have been working on, we've been working on a little bit on our Crestron integration. We didn't roll it out. We weren't quite ready for prime time when the semester started. But that's more the alley that we have been pursuing. Also, hi Brad, how's it going?
Yeah, we do have a lot of Stream Deck customers. They fully integrate with all of our products, like everything else in AV right now. Common more in the live event space and corporate video, at least in my experience. Jesse Mills, has Epiphan considered developing an AV over IP router? Well, our product team will be watching this and they will be asking more questions about that. Jesse's looking at solutions for NDI routing and use Epiphan recorders with NDI. So that's interesting. We haven't
That
thought about that. Yeah.
To that end, though, they are NDI enabled. I know that's something that we have been looking at. And we're in the process of sort of redoing our classroom standard while we do this. This is just one of the several pieces about it, and I know that we have looked at and been evaluating, how to get cameras back in as we've been looking at moving over cameras. And the NDI ingest into the Epiphan is fairly easy, but getting it to that second location is sort of because we also use our same cameras for capture as well as conferencing. So sort of once you start stacking those things in together, we've been looking a little bit more at the traditional, how are we getting video back into the video system.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a popular topic right now at the Epiphan offices with this new camera being NDI capable, but also PoE. It means a very tidy arrangement. Okay. Oh, and that's the next question. Will the EC20 be PoE and NDI? Yes, it will be PoE NDI, which means single cable, put it at the back of the room, and you're good to go. Okay, this is from Edward. This is a question for me. What platform are you using to do this virtual event for the polling? This is Wistia. Wistia offers a webinar side of things. Okay, and are we using a Stream Deck directly to switch? I can ask Dan, who's doing our production in the background. Yeah, the graphic overlays that you see where it says my name and the questions and the logos and stuff, that's all done through our graphics program. Okay. This is from Mary Evers. Do you all have a dedicated person to monitor the recording individually, or do you have the ability to remotely monitor the recordings? So maybe John or Adam, either one of you can pick this. How do you monitor what's going on in classrooms?
So we have a group of students. So first of all, UB has 3 campuses. We have a North Campus, which is where the majority of our undergraduate program is, South Campus, which is where our professional programs are, and then a downtown medical school. And we have a group of student assistants in the North and South campuses that do monitor the recordings daily or hourly, I should say. They monitor them in Panopto right now. We can log into Panopto or Epiphan Cloud from anywhere. I mean, I watched it while I was in Raleigh last week at the ETC conference. So yeah, no problem monitoring them wherever you are in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to be people love the fact that they can do it from anywhere. I had a guy in Norway tell me he monitored it from the ski lift because he likes to ski. And every now and again, he gets a service call and he can fix it while he's on the lift going back up. So
my hope is that the reliability that I'm seeing proves true, that we won't have to monitor them as much. That maybe those student assistants won't have to be chained to the desk per se and watch them all day long. But that, we'll see where we go with that.
Yeah,
right
and the other thing about that is as we've made our capture more ubiquitous across all of our campuses, that it becomes another window into the classroom. Even when our problem isn't a recording problem, it's nice to have that available. You know, if you're running a capture, if they're doing all the things you need to be doing to get a capture in there, you are already essentially in the room, and we can have somebody be at our South Campus help desk and have good visibility into a room when they get a call from somebody. And at least that tier one interaction can go even faster than it ordinarily would, just by virtue of having this rolled out more places.
Great answer. Okay, a couple more questions here. This one's from Todd. Curious if Epiphan and Panopto are working on enabling the pearls to upload while recording. He talks about as a PC-based remote recorder software usually does. They have pearls at Duke, but they would like to be able to upload at the same time as they're recording. So I see customers who are doing like a webcast at the same time as recording, which kind of does that. But the way our paradigm works is it records everything completely when the recording is done and then pushes those files up to Panopto. So I don't know, Todd. I've written that question down. I've sent it to our product manager in the background here. So I'll get you a longer, more fulsome answer on that. So Chris Kelly says, we use extrons for recording. We stream it out while recording to Panopto, but there's a small delay preventing it from being really synchronous. I don't know what he means by synchronous. What does it look like to have Epiphan to livecast a recording? Is that an option? So yes, you're streaming, and I think the backbone is RTMP streaming when you do that, Chris, to Panopto. So I would expect same thing like what we're doing on this broadcast today. It would be 20, 30 seconds. But again, I'll write this down and I'll get you the exact number, what you can expect when you use Epiphan for webcasting, because we allow you to webcast at the same time as record. So should be able to get what you need.
Yeah, we deal with that same problem with the Panopto live streaming options. There is a pretty substantial delay there. And then usually when we're dealing with that kind of delay is when we start talking about more of a conferencing, you know, setting up a webinar on the side, side loading that kind of thing.
Yeah, but maybe it's something that we can talk to Panopto about if they're going to consider some kind of a low latency, faster live setup. Oh yeah, we have another question from Justin on the same side of things. Justin Rose looking for real-time processing rather than ladder processing to result in faster uploading to the Panopto server. So that's a topic as well here at the office. So we are looking into ways that we can get faster content turnaround, which seems to be a need from a lot of people. Do you guys have any issues with how fast it takes the content to turn around from when it's recorded in the room? Does that come up?
It definitely did come up a couple times at the very beginning. I think that it was just a little bit of an education thing in terms of, I wouldn't say that there's a real sea change in the amount of difference it is for getting the video reviewed. I think that typically when you see it, it runs into a problem on the scale of somebody just missed class and wishes they didn't miss class versus somebody wanted to watch the video that night.
Yeah.
We, especially on particularly long classes, I would say that the worst we get is about an hour.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question from Jesse asking about wants to set up Perl to record. He's using QSys. So he's looking at, can he use his QSys to record to Kaltura one day and then stream it to YouTube the next day, looking for how fast that rerouting can be done. And from what I know of the QSys plugin, it shouldn't be a challenge because you just build more pages onto that platform and more, it's all just API calls. So it sounds simple, but I will, like the other questions, give you an exact answer from an engineer, not a marketing guy. Okay, from Clara, what advice would you have for schools starting the standardization process for classroom technology? What's one step, one tool? This is in your wheelhouse. Go ahead.
I love this question. Only I talked a lot about it at ETC last week too. So, next step or first step really is, I think it's buy-in with your team on your campus. But more so, it's understanding what you have and how you're going to plus up to that standard. Start with a survey. I would recommend using LSRS. It's well established. It's a great way to sort of understand where your classrooms are. And then I would say look for tools that exist on the market that are built for higher ed, that are built to manage classroom inventories, that can do end of life reporting, that can do assessments, things like that. That's a great tool. Leadership understands it. Leadership knows how to think about budgeting that way, and it really gives them a great window into what you both have now and lack and what you want to aspire to be.
A great answer. Great answer. Um, okay.
And stick to the standard. Be religious about it. I should say that. It's important.
How do you mean? What's the tail that you're worried about when someone doesn't
I
stick to it?
I mean, I can certainly speak to
Adam,
that. I think that one of my largest pieces of advice is that once you do that evaluation, you figure out, you have the long hard talks that involve the other departments at your team saying, who are we? What do we want to be doing? What do we want to be available for our users? And, the broad, how are we going to do that question? I think that one of the most important things when it comes to adhering to that standard is to start big. Start with your big rooms, start with the ones that feel a little bit out of hand, and think about how we're going to bring those into our standard, and then think about paring down from there as opposed to building up from a teeny tiny room. I've found that when you're really looking at standardization, it's gotten a little bit easier with the AV over IP, changes that have been going on. It's easier than ever to start with your biggest room and to pare down what you're doing from there, so that when you get to that support burden, which everybody in higher ed, we are almost universally more limited in the number of support people we have versus, what we can actually do with our systems, then you're dealing with something that looks consistent from your biggest room to your smallest room, and you have to make fewer exceptions for your strength rooms.
Also good advice. So that's hopefully that helps you, Clara. Okay,
and
Donald
I
Perkins asking, how does it handle captions? We don't handle captions on the Epiphan side, but I believe, do you guys use captions in Panopto, John?
we do, right, Adam? I think
Yep.
we're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Panopto natively does their own auto-generated captions, and then the instructor or somebody else has the option and the opportunity to go in and add those on later. We also, as part of our, the compliance side of things, offer live captioning through a couple tools. I'm blanking on the name of our primary tool right now, and we'll surely get in trouble for that later. Which they do through Zoom or through the Panopto live stream, either of those, where they can hook that in and then get an actual live captioner in there.
Right. Another question from same guy, Donald Perkins. We use Epiphan controls and SMBs, looking to see if Perl or something else can replace most of our controls. We're a Brightspace Usia campus. So that's a fairly typical story I hear, Donald, from people who are, they have some Extron and they're also looking at Epiphan. So I think you'll find it will slot in nicely there. And we also integrate with Usia. So Usia will get it to Brightspace as well. So we can set you up. Call us. We'll show you how the specifically Usia Perl Brightspace workflow would look like. And similarly, Christopher Cheely asks how well does it integrate with Kaltura. It integrates beautifully. Kaltura has a really strong API, and so does Epiphan. And there's a nice pre-built integration to let you do all the things you want to do. There's a lot of schools who are Kaltura Epiphan customers, so we can connect you there and give you a demo if you like, Christopher. Have you figured out how to embed the scheduling page into your Crestron touch panels yet? Have you guys figured that out?
We have not. So there are some features built into Panopto that we can and have that are in the dev folder right now that
Yes.
weren't quite ready for prime time at the start of the semester. We tend not to add features during the semester for what I
Smart.
hope are obvious reasons. I think that in terms of what we've seen from other universities when we have these conversations, where most are not doing pure scheduling on the Crestron touch panel. The easiest, lowest hanging fruit is very much start your recording early, end your recording early, pause your recording in the middle. The pausing recording on Panopto is non-destructive, so that's really great. So that if they realize they forgot to hit the button, they can go up to it later and just, hey, drag that line and make sure that we got our snack break out of there. The other thing that I've seen other people do more typically is just doing it ad hoc and dropping it in the primary folder for that actual recorder. And then typically that's a two-step process where somebody says, I didn't schedule my recording, or I forgot that I was going to have this special event in this room. Hit the button, start an ad hoc recording, and then usually it'll be, I think it was maybe UNLV that had the process by which they said. And then after that, you open up a ticket. You say, I was in this room at this time. I hit the record button and then I hit the stop button. Can you rescue that for me?
Yeah, right.
And that's what we've seen more than actually integrating it directly into, like, we use EMS for calendaring. And while I am sure that somebody who's really good could do that, is the juice worth the squeeze kind of question for us.
A good summary on that. Thank you. I see one more question here from Bob. If you have any more, you can squeeze them in here, but otherwise we'll wrap up here in a minute. Bob's asking about Teams and Zoom working with the Nexus. That's just for streaming and not web conferencing, correct? Well, there's a couple of ways that we work with Zoom and Teams that, yes, if you have a Nexus, you can output uh, an HDMI feed and then convert it into USB and bring it into the conferencing application. There's a lot of our customers who use our capture cards for that workflow. We also have a product called Epiphan Connect, which is what we're using for this webinar, where we can extract different participants from a Zoom call and bring them into a production. Typically not so much used in a day-to-day classroom environment, but for live events like this, it's a great tool. So you can check out our website for both of those kind of stories. And from Mark, did we talk about how instructors are scheduling? So the way we see it done most often would be through Panopto's scheduling workflow from Panopto down, and it drives the behavior on the Epiphan devices. So you enter your schedule in Panopto, and it will queue the necessary rooms and devices to work accordingly. But I don't know if you guys have do you have a scheduling tool outside of Panopto, like your own timetabling
For
tool?
captures?
For the faculty to enter their own scheduling.
Oh, they're doing it through Panopto too, right? Or through
They are
their
doing it through Panopto. Okay, some people use a third-party like timetabling tool, and then that drives the Panopto scheduler. So
Oh, God. So generally the process by which, and of course, there's other ways to get your recording scheduled. The typical way is that when we get people scheduled in a centrally scheduled classroom space, it's a trade of the room that it's available for Panopto scheduled recording, and then that generates a ticket for it to get recorded by our to get
got it.
scheduled by our capture team. So
Got it.
we don't
Okay.
have those hooks directly into it because it's not that big of a lift.
They just send their requests. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So that's all of the questions. Great questions from this audience. So kudos to those of you watching. This has been a nice conversation. Let me thank John and Adam. You guys have been great. Thank you so much. I know you had a busy week last week with ETC and also at the beginning of the term, and you have a million things going on. So we really appreciate you spending a bit of time with us today, and hopefully you enjoyed the conversation.
very much so. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
And thanks to everybody for watching. Now, if you put a question in here that we didn't get to, we're going to be following up with you. So stay tuned, look for an email from some random person at Epiphan saying, what were you talking about there? And we're going to try and get to the bottom of that. We might find you on LinkedIn if we can't find your email in our system, but this has been really great. Call us if you want to learn more about how these kind of systems can work out. We can show you a demo in your environment where you can try to get your head around how Epiphan might be a solution for what you're trying to do in your classrooms. So that's all for today. Thanks so much. Stay tuned on the socials. We'll be back with a camera launch in 9 days and lots of other cool content around that. So thanks, everybody.